So we're going to jump into the next one. This is going to be SCP-610, The Flesh That Hates. Object Class Keter, Contagion SCP by TheVolgun. I know about SCP. I followed it for a while with the Exploring series, so I know what we're getting into here. I also realize I am, well, I got the trash bag nearby with fresh lining because I know what we're getting into here. There is a non-zero chance I will need it. Yeah. This is fine. This is safe. Why am I doing this willingly? I don't know. I really don't. Either way, we're going to jump in and see where this goes. You guys know the deal. There'll be a link below. I haven't seen TheVolgun before, so I'm not entirely sure if it's good or not, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say someone who puts time to learn anything about SCP is probably obsessively compulsive to the point of making sure they do good work, because that is kind of what SCP does to people. It is its own contagion risk. A mimetic one, even. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Researcher Miller, and the SCP we're going to be studying today is SCP-610.
Wait. Researcher Miller, PhD, safe, elucid, Keter, showing the different things on the backboard, or blackboard in the background.
Object class.
And the actual art style they used to show it.
Special containment procedures. Due to the vast area of infection SCP-610 covers, containment is impossible. Isolation of the area has proved far more effective, and permission has been granted by the Russian government to establish a perimeter to keep people out of these areas under the guise of military operations. Should any organism displaying traits consistent with SCP-610 be sighted near this perimeter, then the established protocol requires it be engaged at range with small arms until immobile, then dispatched using incendiary weapons and munitions from as great a distance as possible.
See, I've heard so many things that build on SCP-610, that build on the flesh that hate, to the expanded lore about what this is by multiple people's interactions. So just hearing them say, we can contain it with bullets, small arm bullets, and fire. Yeah, I don't think that would work too well.
Any living thing coming in physical contact with an organism infected with SCP-610
should immediately pull the gun on themselves for safety measures. Well, I can't speak to the measures.
Considered expendable and is to be immediately terminated and incinerated.
Yes.
Any persons coming within 3 meters of SCP-610 infected life are to immediately withdraw from the area, be isolated from the rest of the team, and subjected to medical examination using only remote techniques to determine if infection has occurred, and appropriate steps taken based on that determination. At present, the known infection vectors of SCP-610's spread seems to be focused on physical contact. Drone movements with heavily infected areas have returned air samples containing minute particulate, which, when exposed to organic compounds, will result in the spread of SCP-610. The results of these particular tests have revealed that most require several days to manifest, if at all, with the exception of direct contact with exposed lung and liver tissue. These particular tests show a rapid rate of growth, which requires incineration of the testing environment no more than 24 hours after initial exposure, even with a 2-hour mishap risking a compromised facility event. Given that this kind of rapid growth only occurs in organic material existing outside the human body, this form of infection is currently considered a minor concern. These peculiarities have given rise to a series of questions regarding the
when you could hear, yeah, compromised facility in hours, and it's a minor concern. It does kind of set up exactly what kind of hell they're walking into on this one.
Possible origin of the infection in conjunction with the fatal containment protocol remains at a scorched earth.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't really place on here where the actual data expunger right here. And to show the data being expunged, they had the actual audio being disturbed.
Policy at this time, and no concern for transmission via water or air infection parameters exist, barring situational changes in the field. Description. Initial reports of SCP-610 came direct from the Russian government through undisclosable channels. These reports consisted primarily of disappearances of farmers in the region, and were not considered until the local police, followed by the regional police, and finally, a government dispatch agent All failed to report within a 72-hour period. A small military contingent was dispatched to the area and quickly withdrew, at which point the Foundation was contacted to investigate. The area SCP-610 affects is close to Lake Baikal in southern Siberia.
Baikal. For some reason, that name sounds familiar. Is that the lake that was poisoned by the Russian government, or is that a different one I'm thinking about?
Areas of known infection are marked on the map provided to us. Containment perimeters are marked in blue surrounding these infection areas, and as of present, no further locations have been identified. Incursions into the perimeter must be reported prior to conducting, confirmed during exploration, and debriefed on immediately following return. SCP-610 appears to be a contagious skin disease at first, with symptoms including rash, itching, and increased skin sensitivity. Within 3 hours, the disease will cause blemishes resembling heavy scar tissue to form in the chest and arm areas, spreading to the legs and back within an additional hour, consuming the victim completely within 5 hours. Exposure to high temperatures vastly decreases the time for the contagion to spread, and complete infections have been recorded occurring in as little as 5 minutes. After the completion of the infection occurs, the victim's life functions will cease for approximately 3 minutes, after which time they will restart at 2 to 3 times the activity rate of a normal human. Following this, the scar tissue on the victims will start to move of its own accord and grow at a rapid rate. Normal human features start to disappear at this point under the infection.
And this is the part where I knew it would start hitting me. When you start talking about the infection leaving scars that move and warp, and you get basically what's in the image here, and yeah, I'm okay with this. Yeah, I'm absolutely certain I'm not gonna be able to do the entire one today because I'm already feeling it. It's just this image coupled with my imagination running. Yeah, I'm starting to taste breakfast again, and that's not pleasant.
And the path of mutation appears to be largely random. Subjects observed during this stage of infection have been recorded as growing 3 or more limbs of a type, such as arms or legs. The head may become misshapen and elongate or widen out, and parts of the subject may split open, from which additional branches of flesh will grow. The duration of this stage of infection is unknown, and not all subjects appear to progress to the later stages. Under unknown conditions, an infected individual will cease moving and place itself in a location it deems suitable where it roots itself. The fleshy growth on the victim will then begin to spread across all surrounding objects and consume them. Such objects do not spread infection as living creatures do, however, and the effect of prolonged contact with these objects is recorded later in this document. It is assumed that this behavior is to create an area hospitable to continued growth of the other infected.
Warm, hot,
Observation
and moist.
of life infected by SCP-610 by staff is impossible. Those infected with the disease immediately seek out aid, as natural human impulse resulting in unintended infections. Those infected past the scar tissue phase actively and aggressively attempt to infect anyone approaching them within an undefined area. It has been established that should an infected be capable of sight and observe an uninfected, it will proceed towards them. If the infected has lost the ability of sight, a range of approximately 30 meters is considered safe.
Using the phrase safe with this SCP. Yeah. Again, this is one of those. It does change later because a lot of other people have written follow-up SCPs based on this, because that's kind of how SCP works. It's open format. Anyone can write anything based on it. And there are a lot of entire universes based around SCP that are self-contained to a single author's works, or a class of author who started that and then other people liked it, so they wrote their own things. It's kind of like if there's Cthulhu mythos with separate Cthulhu mythoses within the Cthulhu mythos. And it's fascinating to see these mini universes describe themselves.
Observation of SCP-610 infected settlements has been established using artificial methods,
And yes, I am
such
distracting
as
myself from
remote
everything else.
robots. The data returned from these observations, coupled with the openly aggressive nature of the infected to attempt to spread SCP-610, has resulted in the Keter classification. However, so long as nothing is allowed to enter or leave the infected areas, it is considered a neutralized threat.
That's
Concern
wrong.
are the cavernous areas beneath the infected settlements that were discovered during the exploration, and attempts to get research personnel into these areas are underway. Okay, we will now be going over the field logs associated with SCP-610. Unfortunately, at this time, SCP-610-L6 has been redacted. The only thing available about this field log is it's an exploration record of Operation Source Point, which I've been informed is for Class A personnel or higher only. So, without further ado, this is Field Log SCP-610-L1. A small remote-controlled rover is sent to Site A to locate missing personnel. After establishing the...
I mean, to be fair, the last time I heard this specific SCP, again, it was on the Exploring series, and it was oh shit, it was actually 3 years ago? Shit, it's been 3 years since I actually heard this SCP specifically. It's not any better. It's really not. I'm actively freaked out right now, and I'm just kind of... I think I'll pass on having food this
containment
month.
perimeter for SCP-610, the Russian government approved our requests to research and investigate the area. For the first such exploration, a small camera-mounted unit known as a Herbie was dispatched at a safe distance and directed towards Site A. Herbie has a battery life of 12 hours and a control range far wider than that required for this dispatch. Herbie is able to enter Site A without incident. The landscape around Site A shows early stages of assimilation by singular SCP-610 infected who have fallen at largely random intervals around what remains of the village. Many of the homes appear to have suffered fire damage long since put out. However, a fair amount remain intact.
Probably spread it
Aerial
fast by
reconnaissance of
lighting
Site
their house
A, combined with thermal imaging, has put it at an estimated population of 79 infected. Immobile infected are included in this number. However, it is difficult to ascertain an exact percentage
So
of
it's
mobile
at least
versus
79.
immobile. Varying degrees of physical mutation due to SCP-610 are present in Site A, and it is assumed all the inhabitants are in advanced stages of the infection. Herbie observed the exterior of the village for 2 hours, during which time all infected behaved with what appeared to be a loose sense of social structure. Because Herbie remained stationary during this observation period, it is unknown precisely what each individual infected person was doing. However, the central plaza experienced occasional bursts of activity and downtime. Requiring more information, Herbie was directed to follow an infected as it entered a home. There is a bumpy camera feed as Herbie scoots over the gravel behind the quickly shambling infected person. The interior of this home is the same as that attached to the primary file, or SCP-610.
They're
the
living
infected
in
being
themselves.
tailed is the one sitting at the table. After entering the home, Herbie's camera was raised slowly as to not to draw attention. This action was either unnoticed or ignored. The infected person is watched from the doorway as it hobbles around the home and stops at each of the other visible infected organisms. However, it appears to ignore the one under the table, which, while not immobile, does not leave that area. What this creature was before infection is unclear. After lapping the table and repeating this procedure 3 times, the primary infected person, known as Alpha, henceforward, stops at the bedridden infected, known as Beta, and proceeds to assault it with furious punches.
So part of distracting myself right now is just mentioning that in the chat, Old Man mentioned he watched this in the dark with red lights on at night. I'm freaked out during the day with bright white lights on, with kittens meowing in the background, and actively trying to jump over a grate so they can shoo the wires that would make them into a good impersonation of the cat from that one Christmas movie, that name I cannot remember. So yeah, hi, body horror. I'm just going to continue engaging with you today. That's fine. I don't need sleep this month, or food, or the ability to maintain my bowels, because at this point, it's not just my stomach that's threatening me.
Beta is unable to leave the bed for unknown reasons, but it is not completely immobile as it flails its arms in response to the beatings delivered by Alpha. After several sustained minutes of this beating, a piercing sound explodes from the area around Beta, who then proceeds to project a cloud of unknown matter into the air from its chest cavity. Alpha lingers in the cloud as it floats in the air around them, slowly descending into the ground. The unknown life form on the table aside Beta begins to twitch in an apparent seizure, and Alpha again laps the room twice more, stopping again at each infected organism, but still ignoring the one under the table, as well as Beta now. After these 2 laps, Alpha seats itself at the table and reaches out to position the 3 plates atop it as if setting a dinner set. After the plates are positioned, the facial tendrils extending from Alpha wiggle up and start to coil on one of the plates before tearing apart and separating. This is repeated at each plate. The image attached to SCP-610's primary file is a still image of this occurrence. After each plate is filled with Alpha's flesh, it leaves the table and approaches Herbie, which is moved from Alpha's path. Alpha leaves the home, but Kirby's camera remains focused on the table. After several minutes, a group comprised of 6 to 7 infected enter the room from outside, still ignoring Herbie. Each infected shambles as if movement is difficult, jerking in large steps or squirming.
It's like zombie logic, but seeing zombie society, or the parody of society just hardwired into whatever is left of the flesh brain matter. It's so disturbing. And Old Man mentioned dinner tonight. Meatloaf! Ha ha! Yeah, ignore why it's screaming as you still bite it.
Small ones. These infected all surround the table and each take turns grabbing handfuls of the flesh substance left by Alpha, pressing it into whatever orifices on themselves they can. Some into mouths, some into the chest.
This is the wrong time to drink something. Ugh. Okay, I'm good. I'm good.
Some behind their backs, some under the arms. When all the plates are empty, this group leaves. Herbie remains here for several more minutes before retracting its camera and leaving. Immediately after leaving the home, Herbie collides with an object. Panning the camera around, the obstruction appears to be Alpha, whose facial tendrils are intermingling with another infected having similar mutations. The impact is ignored,
lovely.
And the 2 infected part ways after several minutes. Herbie is then directed to explore more areas of the village. The remains of what appears to have been a store show signs of severe fire damage, as well as...
And you can see the underlying one, the person in the bed they were beating to get the spores out of. And then they had the person they were kissing outside, or the equivalent of it. It's like a parody of a social structure, yeah.
activity inside the building, which Herbie moves to investigate. The door is slightly ajar, and with firm movements of Herbie, it is pushed open. No notice is taken of this action, or it is ignored. Inside the store are several infected persons, most of whom are standing around. However, one is on the ground rolling back and forth over the space of approximately 0.3 meters, it's about 1 foot, and is ignored by the others. Herbie rolls under the divider, separating the cashier area from the customer area, and pans around behind the counter. The upper half of a person is protruding from a cellar door behind the counter. This person does not appear to be suffering from advanced infection and wears the garb of a Russian soldier. Herbie zooms in the camera to confirm identification, and it is noticed the eyes of this person are in constant movement, often focusing on Herbie. The rest of the soldier does not move. Herbie is directed to leave this area and proceeds to the back room.
So it's someone who can still see them, but they're not actually allowed to die. Also, New Yorkers, you're asking if that's what kissing looked like. What it looked like if they had fluff. I think we had that earlier, where he beat the stuffing out of the lady in the bed, or the guy in the bed. I don't know, but it put the spores everywhere. I'm pretty sure that is actually what it was. Yep.
In this storage area, a large pile of bodies are stacked together. Some pieces of clothing are visible and appear to contain both military garb and everyday clothing. No facial features are discernible on any of the bodies due to the way they're stacked. Atop the bodies, an infected sits, appearing to have its lower parts fused to the pile, and with its upper half in a wild state of flailing and seizure. Approximately every 10 seconds, a burst of spores flies out the top of this infected, which linger in the air. Herbie is directed to leave the building. After leaving this building, Herbie passes by the village well, surrounding which are a series of immobile infected, all facing the well. The arms of each of these infected persons are stretched out, one in contact with the next, forming a perfect chain, save for one, whose arms are down at his sides. Herbie passes by this last infected to approach what appears to have been a town hall or mayor's building.
I'm just distracting myself right now by remembering with how SCP has progressed. This initial one, despite being an infection of a spore-like version, basically Last of Us, but just monstrous, but less initially effective, changed significantly from this to a world-ending threat in some variations to, and this is real, the source of all life and the good god that was essentially destroyed by the mechanical god. There's a lot of variations on how you take this, but it doesn't matter because right now we're dealing with the initial one without any of the context that came later. And while it's fun to compare, it is just disturbing in how it's such a parody in the most disturbing and grotesque way possible. And just the more you think about it, the more fucked up it is.
Building when the infected becomes mobile and snatches the rover up.
I'm intentionally not looking at that
Video feed
picture
from
right
Herbie
now.
focuses on the face of the infected, which is strangely in perfect shape,
Oh.
given the condition of the rest of its body, which is horribly bloated. This infected was once a young girl from appearance, estimated 10 to 12. Herbie is rolled side to side in its grip as its face stares motionless at the rover. The infected's face suddenly balloons in size and explodes outward into a series of fleshy flaps that grip Herbie and draw it inside.
And yes, it was a little girl's face that was being worn by a flesh monster to cover the essential monstrous mouth. So those weren't little girl's face, that was face paint on the lips of the monster. I can't think of a better word to describe it, and that is unfortunately the best one. And well, this is basically just weak Nurgle. Honestly, this might be, but with how this specific thing is described later, it would basically give Nurgle a run for its money if fully unleashed. But that's not this version. It's some of the various things that came later.
Herbie's video feed terminates here. Herbie was considered lost at this point. However, no one at Control remembered to turn off the video feed, assuming it cut. 5 hours later, Herbie's video feed resumed, stationary and at raised level, pointing at the upper rim of the village well. The video feed contains some blur due to what appears to be a slimy film, which often oozes across the lens, but when not obscured, provides perfect quality recording. Herbie does not respond to any remote commands, but its video jerks back and forth from target to target, zooming in and zooming out of its own accord. Video feed is cut manually, and all connections to Herbie's unit are ordered erased. Moving on, this is field log SCP-610-L2. An infected Class D personnel is sent into Site C with video
Oh, they're
equipment.
already infected.
During construction of the perimeter surrounding SCP-610's containment area, several Class D personnel were infected due to assaults from the infected villagers or...
Also, I should probably clarify for anyone who's watching this and doesn't know the SCP. The SCP Foundation is Secure, Contain, Protect. That might give you the idea they're the good guys, and sometimes they are. I say sometimes because Class D personnel are human trash. And I don't mean that as they're horrible people. A lot of them are. Sometimes they're not. But every time they are treated like trash, as in disposable. They're basically given a death sentence and made useful until it's carried out. How horrible, how horrific, and how much they actually deserve it depends on the author of every single one. And it does vary wildly. So, yeah. This is basically the scapegoat they have almost unlimited supply of.
Or animals roaming the area, in addition to a number of infections as a result of escape attempts and careless behavior. Most of these infected personnel were immediately destroyed with flamethrowers. However, a small collection of infected were contained in cold storage units, which prolonged the inevitable progression of SCP-610's mutative properties. The decision was made to utilize some of these infected personnel as video relays and dispatch them to nearby sites. Due to the concern over loss of equipment, as evidenced in SCP-610-L1, all 3 subjects that were used in this manner were sent in with a single video system to Site C. Additional equipment issued for this dispatch include a 1-gallon container of gasoline, 3 emergency flares, 3 9mm pistols with 3 magazines of ammunition each, and 3 single-serving food rations. The infected personnel were instructed to observe and avoid interaction with the infected villagers as long as possible. But should a situation arise where they are met with aggression or feel they are losing themselves to SCP-610's influence, they are free to kill as many infected villagers as they so choose and do
That's actually surprising. Usually they're not even given that leeway.
As much damage to infected objects and property as possible while maintaining video feed.
Because they also want to check out what would happen if actually attacked.
The intent of this order was to provide data of SCP-610 infected communities in a raid situation, so a plan of eradication could be better established. At the time of this expedition, Site C was suspected to be a possible origin point for SCP-610, having far fewer mobile infected than other sites, as well as structures which appear to have been layered over several times, with the terraforming effects of the immobile infected. Dispatch Class D personnel, known henceforth as DI-1, DI-2, and DI-3, were directed to pay
Just going to give them props on not calling them the DIY, the do-it-yourself class, which would also be accurate.
Particular attention to anything that could be considered
self-disposing
an origin point for SCP-610. The trek from our perimeter camp to Site C was uneventful. There was no evidence of any native animal life in the area. As Site C is approached, there is no noticeable rise in the temperature within the last 30 meters of the trip that necessitates removal of the heavy cold-based coverings that were provided. The temperature rises again sharply at the entrance to Site C proper, which requires a further shedding of garments for fear of heat stroke. Temperatures within Site C are described as being heavily humid, around 32 degrees. That's 89 Fahrenheit. One of the first immediately noticed traits about Site C is an array of immobile pylons, which encircle what is believed to be the entirety of the site, separated by an apparent distance of 5 to 6 meters. Each pylon appears to be 2 to 4 infected persons fused together in one spot. On some of these pylons, features such as faces or anuses are still visible, in addition to several other holes which do not naturally occur.
I'm just having great regret at myself for just thinking what this would look like. And it's a pillar of fused flesh. It's like a little girl in a dress calling herself Bonesaw would look at this and go, ooh, good idea. And that's about the only thing I can say.
All appearing to act as heat vents. Where the heat is generated is unknown. Current belief is that this is an advanced stage of SCP-610 terraforming in its environment to facilitate spread of itself. DI-2, who was the furthest along in progression of SCP-610 of the 3 by a number of hours, begins to seizure after only a few minutes in Site C during examination of the pylons.
Breaking down.
The progression to the scar tissue phase of SCP-610 infection is observed in full course as DI-2 spasms on the ground, his entire body being overtaken by the sticky tan flesh almost entirely after 45 seconds. DI-2 was terminated by a gunshot from DI-1 and his equipment left where it is. The spread of SCP-6...
And that is probably the nicest thing you could ever hear happen to anyone in the SCP. Being allowed to die safely.
610 over DI-2 continues even after death of the body until all movement ceases. As perimeter control is relaying new instructions to DI-1 and DI-3 regarding the
Flood,
situation, there is a
but more
shift in the ground cover
forward-thinking.
in Site C, where DI-2's body is. Video feed shows the flesh-like growth splitting open beneath his body, and a series of ropey tendrils coming from within the gap to pull his corpse inside. This opening closes up quickly. Total time elapsed 3 seconds. As DI-1 and DI-3 decide to act quickly in these hotter temperatures, fearing the same fate, they proceed to the village center and encounter another previously unknown phenomenon. In the precise center of town, rising above what was the community well, is a sphere suspended by angled supports comprised of SCP-610 flesh. The ball is riddled with the features of humans in early stages of SCP-610 infection, as well as a good number assumed to be in later stages. A number of specimens of non-human life forms, such as deer and bears, are also visible within the mass. The entire sphere of flesh pulses at a roughly 5-second interval, and with each pulse emits a ring of spore-like material from its equator.
I just want to say it's a good thing this isn't glowing, because then it would be a literal light of flesh and nothing else that might sound more disturbing if I said it any other way.
This material floats to the ground and appears to be absorbed into the converted environment. DI-3 begins to douse the sphere with the provided gasoline, and when questioned by a panicking DI-1, explains this looks like as good a thing to burn as any. At this
And of course, they're testing just what extra heat would do when directly applied. And considering how things have progressed, they mentioned things are already on fire. We know where this is going to go. We're going to light that flesh. Yep.
At this point, perimeter control has ceased in giving commands due to the rapid deterioration of events. There is no reaction from anything within Site C to any of this
Why would they
activity
react? They
until
like
the precise moment at which a lit emergency flare is applied to the spherical mass, which immediately goes up in flames. The remote feed plays back a noise from an unknown location that seems to come from a location far outside of Site C, but was reported as being heard, even at perimeter control, by both Site C and A. The noise described as both explosive, as if multiple high-yield charges were detonated on a mountainside, and alive, like a large feral creature roaring. Within 15 seconds following this sound's dissipation, Site A reported that a series of explosions had occurred within the village. 5 seconds after this report, the spherical mass in the middle of Site C explodes. DI-1 and DI-3 are thrown by the blast. DI-3 is confirmed deceased by DI-1 after regaining his footing, having suffered injury from stone shrapnel from the wall. DI-1 is able to report he has bruises and ringing ears, but aside from the rapidly spreading SCP-610 infection, he suffered no blast damage. During this recording of footage, DI-1 had his video equipment removed and was looking into it. Due to the angle of recording, it is unknown precisely what occurred in Site C, but something draws DI-1's attention back to the center of town, where he stares for several moments and is then pulled in the opposite direction, the video equipment falling to the ground and recording in a skyward direction. The last moments of footage from DI-1's video unit display a humanoid figure moving through the air, followed by the sound of an impact in the same direction. Within 3 seconds of this event, an unknown creature steps upon the recording video equipment and destroys it. Perimeter control remained on high alert for a full 24 hours at all locations without any incident following this event.
Yeah, this is a lot. Now we're moving into the more of the horror side, although just the descriptions of the flesh monstrosities everywhere, man. If you want to make me feel like I'm going to lose control of my stomach, this is one way to do it. I'm doing better, but there's been a few moments where it's not a sure thing today. Also, God, they mentioned in chat, sounds like the perfect moment to be eating spaghetti bolognese. Oh, God. I hope you're joking, because if you actually are and I'm subjecting you to this at the same time, I am so sorry. Not sorry enough to stop, but pretty close. Because that, oh God.
And moving on to field log SCP-610-L3, initial discovery of the tunnel entrances at Site A.
Yep.
The destruction caused by the rapid collapse of the Site C exploration attempt during SCP-610-L2
That's where they find out what they believe is not
resulted in a
everything there
series
is.
of unexpected events in Site A. As the strange spherical formation in Site C was burned and destroyed, the SCP-610 infected inhabiting Site A were recorded by aerial drones going into seizures and convulsions. The immobile SCP-610 infected rapidly shriveled and died, along with all of the flesh material spread across inanimate objects within the village. The mobile SCP-610 infected, who were able to regain their footing, all proceeded to what appears to have formerly been an upper-class residence and entered the building. As the infected entered this dwelling, it suffered a foundational collapse, revealing the presence of a sinkhole beneath it. The size of the hole in relation to the structure above it posed an impossibility for an entire building to collapse, suggesting something within the hole applied force directly to the structure with the intent to pull it inside and expose the hole. The revealed hole is approximately large enough to accommodate 3 grown men standing shoulder to shoulder. Light sources applied by remote drones failed to penetrate further than 4 meters depth into the hole. Objects dropped into the hole did not produce an impact sound, suggesting a bottom potentially more than 1,000 meters down. Research of the exterior of the Site A hole was only able to be carried out for 2 hours at a time. Samples of the atmosphere in Site A indicated a complete death of SCP-610 related materials. All infectious life that did not evacuate into the hole died above ground and quickly became shriveled husks.
And I think that's one of the big differences between this SCP and the ones that follow on it. Things dying when exposed to this. Usually the flesh that hates is way more, no, I'm going to live and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So yeah, you can definitely see that it wasn't meant nearly as apocalyptic as a lot of later writers decided it was. And it does go to show that the writers do all have their own variations. But even then, this is still really screwed up. Like, just everything about it is showing an unworldly, unknowable situation. And it's doing a great job of showing what this looks like from the outside without any context to understand what we're looking at. And that lack of context makes it even more horrific. Because it looks like it might have a point that you just don't understand.
And commenced immediately. In the span of 30 minutes, a total of 3 research teams consisting of 2 to 3 research staff and 4 to 5 armed escort each were dispatched and setting up stations within the remains of the village. Samples of deceased SCP-610 infected and converted matter were sent back to Perimeter HQ for processing and transport. One team was able to recover a small sample of still living SCP-610 tissue substance from a building and pack it for research. Within the second hour of exploration of Site A, a series of echo reverberation units were set up surrounding the hole with the intent of getting an accurate mapping of the hole and possible branch tunnels. At the end of this second hour, before the echo units could be activated, seismic activity began to occur within Site A. 2 teams of the original 3 remained on site, the third en route back to Perimeter HQ with samples. The third team was instructed to proceed back to Perimeter HQ when seismic activity began, and were told that Site A should not be returned to for assistance. Seismic activity at Site A capped at a 2.3 Richter level before petering off.
Yes,
immediately following the seismic
that makes
event,
sense.
a torrent of SCP-610 spores erupted from the hole and layered the area around it for a span of 50 meters.
Rebuilding what it
as all
already
staff
had.
on site were in Level A hazardous material suits. This spore burst was startling, but did not lead to any infections. As the eruption was being reported, both teams at Site A came under attack from aerial life forms infected with SCP-610. These organisms were captured by the remote drone video equipment and showed extremely advanced stages of infection. It is impossible to tell what they mutated from to this present state. Many of the avian creatures attacked by splitting their heads in half and clamping them against research members, pulling them into the air and dropping them into the hole when possible.
You know, when they said avian creatures, I was thinking crows. Now I'm thinking, oh God, these are the freaking eagles from Lord of the Rings that have like the Sengali elite heads from Halo with the mandibles, except it's not just the mouth, it's the entire head that goes, everything about this is well described as what the God am I looking at? And I stand by that. It is absolutely disturbing.
These avian infected proved vulnerable to small arms fire. In dispatching them, a total of 2 research staff were lost to the hole, and 1 injured due to crossfire. The injured staff was put down immediately upon showing signs of infection due to his suit breach. Before video and radio contact was lost with the remaining teams inside Site A, a second seismic event began to occur, starting out in the 1 to 1.5 range in scale. Attention was directed at the hole to prepare for a second assault.
And they're just basically finding out this wasn't an infection site. This was a tendril that just happened to breach the surface.
A second spore burst erupted from the hole during the rising seismic activity, at the point where scales registered a 3 to 3.5 in force. A new unseen SCP-610 entity began to emerge from the hole. The only footage captured of this creature depicts an engorged human head, approximately 20 times larger than normal, pressing itself out of the hole with no discernible body. Video and radio contact were lost as seismic forces increased to 7 on the scale for 2 seconds duration, then abruptly ceased. Further aerial surveillance of the Site A hole and area depict 0 activity and no traces of the research teams, or their ever having been there. All personnel and equipment are considered lost.
I'm going to stop this one here because I know exactly how far my stomach can go, and we are well past that point. God damn. I mean, like, legitimately, this is rough. I'm good. We're good. And I'm going to keep lying to myself about that. Everything about this is just, this is creepy, and they're just finding out it's a little creepier and a little more advanced. And the overall horror about this isn't so much that it's horrific. It's that horrific is what you're allowed to see on the outside. And it gives a parody of people it's already consumed before you go deeper, literally deeper into the hole, and you see a little more is going on. And it's a little more powerful and a little more aware and a little more fucked up. And every step of the way, it's just, okay, there's more. And we don't think this is good. And minus the entire, this is the SCP Foundation. They go through staff like a dog goes through water bowls made of cotton candy. Is the water going to melt it or the dog eat it first? I don't know. You're going to have to find out. I'd like to point out, I knew what I was getting into with this one. I did this anyways. Oh, God. I will try and get back to this one next week to finish it off. And if anyone else has any other recommendation for things from SCP or other videos or other people doing this, let me know. Because I would like to look more into this entire universe just to get a better idea that I'm not just getting from the limited perspectives I have, but also I think I'm at my limit for today. So we'd like to do that some other time. Thanks. Because right now I'm going to move on to not wanting to immediately void every bit of my guts into the trash can near me. Yeah, that's not a joke. That's me just being completely aware that it freaks me out really hard, and I'm okay with not doing more of it today. It's good. I like it. I like the storytelling. I like the creativity. I like the building sense of dread as you realize what you assume is not accurate, and it is far worse than you believe. So, yeah. Yeah. Also, Improv Man, you're asking if I've read 343 God. Honestly, I might have. I've been listening to the Exploring series cover this for years. That's my most normal way to engage with SCP. But as for right now, I'm gonna do something else. We're gonna move on to, oh God, something else. It's Riverdale from Super High Patch Wolf. Well, that's the thing. For everyone else, you guys know the deal. There'll be a link below. Hit it up, and I'll see you in the next one.